The emergency beacon cut through the silence of space like a scream in the dark. Admiral Kethvar's 6 eyes flickered across the command display of the Galactic Council flagship Harmony's Edge, as the distress signal painted itself in urgent red across the holographic star map. "Another one," whispered Communications Officer Zilna, her tentacles trembling as they worked the controls. "That's the 7th colony this month." The beacon's message was simple and terrifying. Colony designation: Kepler 442b, population 12 million, under attack by unknown hostiles, requesting immediate military assistance. Estimated time until planetary sterilization: 6 hours. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in frustration. 6 hours. Always 6 hours. The pattern had become sickeningly familiar. First contact with an aggressive unknown species, then methodical destruction of everything in their path. 7 worlds, 84 million lives. Gone. "Status report on our rapid response fleets," Kethvar demanded. Defense Coordinator. Thexbor's reptilian features darkened. 7th Fleet is still 18 hours out from the Proxima engagement. 4th Fleet is recovering from the Vega disaster. Our nearest available force is... He paused, checking his tactical display. 22 hours away. The bridge fell silent except for the steady pulse of the emergency beacon. 22 hours. The colony would be ash and radiation by then. "Sir?" Zilna's voice was barely audible. "There is one ship within range." Kethvar's head snapped toward her. "Specify." "A single vessel. Small. Designation? Unclear. They're broadcasting on an obsolete frequency. Pre-council membership protocols." Her tentacles danced nervously over the console. "The signal identifies them as humans." A collective intake of breath swept the bridge. Even Kethvar's composed demeanor cracked. Humans? Thexbor's scales rippled with what might have been amusement or horror. The Deathworlders? The ones who thought tasting poison was a valid testing method? The same species that domesticated persistence predators and convinced them to live in their homes, added Navigation Officer Plexton, his crystalline form flickering with disbelief. For companionship. Kethvar had read the files. Every species in the Galactic Council had read the files after humanity's application for membership was postponed indefinitely. Earth, classified as a Class Duwinthian death world. Gravity that would crush most civilized beings. An atmosphere that was barely controlled chaos. Weather systems that regularly tried to kill everything on the planet. And somehow, impossibly, a species had not just survived there but thrived. The Council's xenobiologist had been fascinated and horrified in equal measure. Humans had taken poisons and called them spices. They had captured apex predators and turned them into pets. They had looked at natural disasters and decided the best response was to build cities in their path and develop better warning systems. But that was the problem. They were survivors, not warriors. Curious, stubborn, and apparently immune to common sense, but not the kind of military force you'd call when facing an existential threat. "Sir, the beacon's intensity is increasing," Zilna reported. "Kepler 442b is broadcasting on all emergency frequencies now. They're showing images of the attacks." The main display shifted to show grainy footage from the colony. Massive ships, sleek and predatory, hung in the sky like metallic storm clouds. Energy beams lanced down, turning city blocks into glass and smoke. In the distance, evacuation shuttles struggled to lift off as more unknown vessels emerged from hyperspace. "How far out are the humans?" Kethvar asked quietly. 4 hours and 37 minutes at their current speed, Plexton replied. "But sir, they're in a single ship. No backup, no fleet support. The tactical situation is impossible." Kethvar stared at the images from Kepler 442b. 12 million souls. Families, children, entire communities facing annihilation. The unknown attackers had proven themselves immune to every conventional military response the Council had attempted. Their technology was superior, their tactics ruthless, their intent clear. Complete extermination. What could one ship do that 7 fleets couldn't? But what choice did they have? Open a channel to the human vessel, Kethvar ordered. The communications array hummed to life, and after a moment, a new voice filled the bridge. It was strange, only one vocal cord, producing a flat, monotonal sound compared to the rich harmonics most species used. But there was something in it, something that made Kethvar's combat instincts prick up. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human exploration vessel, Defiance. We're receiving multiple distress calls on this vector. Is someone out there? Kethvar activated his translator and stepped forward. Captain Chen, this is Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Council Emergency Response Command. We have a critical situation. A pause. Admiral, I'm reading your signature. You're the big shot running the neighborhood watch, right? What's the situation? The casual tone threw Kethvar off balance. No formal protocols, no proper military courtesy. But there was an edge underneath the informality that suggested this human was taking the situation seriously. An unknown hostile. Force is systematically destroying Council colonies. They have attacked 7 worlds in the past month. Kepler 442b is currently under assault, with an estimated population of 12 million. Our nearest response fleet is 22 hours out. Another pause, longer this time. When Chen spoke again, the casual tone was gone. 12 million, how long do they have? Based on previous attack patterns, approximately 5 hours and 43 minutes. And you're calling us because... Kethvar's mandibles clicked in embarrassment. You are the only vessel within response range. The silence stretched so long that Zilna checked the communications array twice to make sure the connection was still active. Finally, Chen's voice returned, but it was different, colder, more focused. Admiral, I need you to understand something. Defiance is an exploration vessel. We've got a crew of 37. Our heaviest weapon is a mining laser we retrofitted. For asteroid clearing, we're not a warship. Captain, I understand the tactical situation is far from optimal, but... Admiral, the single word cut through Kethvar's response like a blade. I didn't say we wouldn't help. On the main display, a new signal appeared on the tactical readout. A small blip accelerating rapidly toward Kepler 442b. Defiance is increasing speed. To maximum burn, reported Plexton, his crystalline form flickering with surprise. They'll reach the colony in 4 hours and 12 minutes. Kethvar felt something he hadn't experienced in his 40 years of military service. Hope mixed with complete bewilderment. Captain Chen, what is your tactical assessment? Admiral, I'll be honest with you. This is probably going to go very badly for us. But 12 million people. The voice trailed off for a moment. We'll figure something out. Defiance, out. The above. Communications channel closed, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir? Thexbor spoke carefully. Should we inform the colony that help is coming? Kethvar watched the small blip on the tactical display racing toward certain destruction. One ship, 37 crew members, armed with mining equipment, against an enemy that had effortlessly destroyed 7 worlds. It was madness. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing humans would do. Open a channel to Kepler 442b, he ordered. Tell them help is on the way. As the bridge crew worked to relay the message, Kethvar found himself staring at the tactical display. In all his years of military service, he had never sent beings to die with such mathematical certainty. But something in Captain Chen's voice, something in the way she had said, "We'll figure something out," made him wonder if perhaps the Council had been asking the wrong questions about humanity all along. Maybe the question wasn't whether they could fight. Maybe the question was what they would do when they had no choice but to fight. The emergency beacon from Kepler 442b continued its steady pulse, counting down to extinction. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, a small human ship raced toward impossible odds. The universe was about to learn something new about Deathworlders. Chapter 2, The Art of Improvisation. 3 hours and 47 minutes until planetary sterilization. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the zero-gravity workshop of the Defiance, surrounded by a constellation of floating tools, spare parts, and increasingly desperate crew members. The ship's retrofitted mining laser hung partially disassembled in the center of the space, its components drifting like metallic jellyfish in the recycled air. "Okay, let's review what we know," Chen said, her voice echoing off the workshop's walls. Around her, the 36 other members of her crew had squeezed into every available space. Some hung from ceiling handholds, others braced against walls, all of them focused on the tactical display that Engineering Chief Marcus Webb had jury-rigged to float in the workshop center. The display showed everything they knew about the enemy, which wasn't much. 7 attacked colonies. Same pattern every time. Large ships, unknown technology, complete destruction in exactly 6 hours, no survivors, no communication attempts, no ransom demands, just methodical extermination. "Chief Webb?" Chen nodded to the graying engineer whose hands were already black with grease from the disassembled laser. "What are we working with?" Webb pulled up the ship's technical specifications. "Good news and bad news, Captain. Good news is we've got the most advanced mining and exploration equipment in this sector. Bad news is none of it was designed to hurt anyone except accidentally." A nervous chuckle rippled through the crew. "Specifically," Webb continued, "we've got the Mark 7 industrial mining laser, good for cutting through asteroids up to 30 meters thick. We've got seismic charges for geological surveys. They're designed to create controlled explosions for scanning purposes, not combat. We've got the deep space sensor array, which is fantastic for finding mineral deposits, but pretty useless for targeting hostile ships." Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's xenobiologist, pushed off from the wall to drift closer to the display. "Marcus, what about the industrial fabricators? Could we make something?" "Make what?" asked Communications Officer Jake Morrison, his young face creased with worry. "We're not talking about building a better mousetrap here. We're talking about fighting ships that have destroyed 7 worlds." "Actually," said Navigation Officer Lisa Park, her fingers dancing over a handheld calculator, "I've been running some numbers on the attack patterns." She gestured, and the tactical display shifted to show the 7 destroyed colonies. "Look at the timing. 6 hours. Always exactly 6 hours from first contact to complete sterilization. That's what makes this so hopeless," Morrison replied. "Their efficient military precision." "No," Park shook her head. "That's what makes this weird. Military precision would be variable timing based on resistance levels, population density, planetary defenses. This is methodical, like they're following a procedure." Chen felt something click in her mind, a pattern she'd seen before, but not in warfare. "Show me the destruction sequence. How do they do it?" Park's fingers flew over her controls, and the display shifted to show grainy footage from one of the destroyed colonies. The sleek enemy ships moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons firing in synchronized pulses that turned sections of the planet's surface into uniform patches of glass and radiation. "They're not fighting," Chen said, quietly. "They're processing." The workshop fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. "Captain," Webb prompted, "look at the pattern. Uniform destruction, systematic coverage, exact timing." Chen's mind was racing now, connecting dots that had been invisible moments before. "This isn't a military operation. It's industrial, Doctor." Vasquez's eyes widened. "Like strip mining." "Exactly like strip mining." Chen turned to Webb. "Marcus, what would you do if you needed to completely clear a contaminated asteroid field before beginning extraction operations?" Webb's grease-stained face went pale. I'd use systematic energy pulses to sterilize the surface, then deep core charges to break up the substrate for easier processing. Standard procedure for biological contamination." "How long would that take?" "For a full planetary-scale operation, about 6 hours to ensure complete sterilization before beginning extraction." The implications hit the crew like a physical blow. "They're not invaders," Morrison whispered. "They're exterminators." "And we're the infestation," added Park grimly. Chen's jaw tightened. Somehow, knowing that 12 million people were about to die as part of a routine industrial procedure made it worse than if they'd been facing a military enemy. At least soldiers fought for reasons. Territory, resources, ideology. This was just housekeeping. Right, Chen said, her voice cutting through the crew's mounting despair. So we know what they're doing. Now we figure out how to stop them. Captain, Morrison said carefully, with all due respect, we've got one mining laser against ships that can glass planets. Jake, how long have you been on this crew? 3 years, ma'am. And in those 3 years, how many times have we encountered problems that seemed impossible to solve? Morrison thought for a moment. Every Tuesday? A few crew members chuckled despite the situation. And how many times have we failed to solve them? Well, never. But Captain, this is different. Those were technical problems. Engineering challenges. This is combat against a superior enemy force. Chen smiled, and there was something in that smile that made Webb remember why he'd followed this particular captain to the edge of known space. Jake, what makes you think those are different kinds of problems? She turned to address the entire crew. Here's what we know. The enemy follows a precise, systematic procedure. They expect no resistance because they've never encountered any. They're not soldiers, they're workers following a routine. And routines, Webb said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in his eyes, can be disrupted. Exactly. But we're not going to fight them ship to ship. We can't win that way. Chen gestured to the tactical display. We're going to do what humans do best. We're going to improvise. For the next hour, the workshop became a storm of activity. Webb and his engineering team began modifying the mining laser, stripping away safety protocols and pushing power levels far beyond manufacturer specifications. Dr. Vasquez worked with the chemistry team to analyze the composition of the seismic charges, looking for ways to enhance their destructive potential. Park and Morrison collaborated on a detailed analysis of the enemy's approach patterns, looking for weaknesses in their systematic methodology. The fabrication team began producing components that had never appeared in any manual, following designs that Chen sketched out on the workshop's walls in permanent marker. Captain, Dr. Vasquez called out, I think we can increase the seismic charges yield by about 300%, but they'll be completely unstable. Timer fuses only, and we'll have maybe 10 minutes from activation to detonation. How unstable? Chen asked. If someone sneezes wrong, we all become a very brief star. Acceptable. Webb, status on the mining laser? Stripped out every safety system we could find. Power output is now at 240% of design specifications. The focusing array will probably melt after 3 sustained shots, and there's a non-zero chance the whole system explodes and takes the ship with it. Define non-zero. Webb grimaced. 30% chance of catastrophic failure with each shot. Also acceptable. Park, what's our approach vector looking like? I've got something, Park said, her voice tight with concentration. The enemy ships maintain perfect formation, but they're following a predictable search pattern. If we come in from the planet's magnetic south pole and use the colony's communication satellites to mask our approach, we might get close enough for weapons range before they detect us. How close? Maybe 2,000 kilometers. The workshop fell quiet. 2,000 kilometers was point-blank range in space combat terms, but it was still an enormous distance for a modified mining laser. It's not a great plan, Chen admitted. Actually, it's a terrible plan. We're going to sneak up on ships that have destroyed 7 worlds, using mining equipment held together with determination and improvised modifications in hopes that we can disrupt their routine long enough for the real military to arrive. She looked around at her crew, 36 faces, all looking back at her with expressions ranging from terror to excitement to grim determination. These were explorers, scientists, engineers. They'd signed up to catalog new stars and analyze mineral compositions, not to fight an interstellar war. But they were human, and humans, as the Galactic Council files had noted with a mixture of admiration and concern, had a disturbing tendency to treat impossible situations as engineering problems. Anyone who wants to transfer to an escape pod, speak now, Chen said. No judgment. This is volunteer only. Silence. Chief Webb? Hell, Captain, I've been wanting to see what this laser could do without all those pesky safety restrictions. Dr. Vasquez? 12 million people, no choice. Morrison? The young communications officer was pale but steady. Someone's got to record this for posterity. Future generations should know what happened when humans got called for help. Chen nodded. All right then. 2 hours and 15 minutes until we reach Kepler 442b. Let's go save 12 million lives with the worst plan in the history of space combat. As the crew dispersed to their final preparations, Chen remained in the workshop, staring at the tactical display. The enemy ships hung in perfect formation around the doomed colony, methodically reducing cities to ash with industrial precision. In her mind, she could hear Admiral Kethvar's words. You are the only vessel within response. Range, wrong species for the job, no military training, no proper weapons, no backup plan, but they were human. And humans had been solving impossible problems since the day they'd looked at fire and decided to make it their pet. The Defiance raced through the darkness toward a battle that would redefine how the galaxy thought about Deathworlders. Behind them, the Galactic Council's emergency fleet pushed their engines to maximum, racing to arrive in time to witness either a miracle or a tragedy. Ahead of them, 12 million lives hung in the balance, waiting to discover what happened when the wrong species answered the call for help. The universe was about to learn that sometimes being wrong was exactly right. Chapter 3. Controlled Chaos, 1 hour and 37 minutes until planetary sterilization. Captain Sarah Chen hung, suspended in the bridge of the Defiance, her hands steady on controls that were never designed for combat. Through the main viewport, Kepler 442b grew from a distant point of light to a blue-brown marble streaked with the smoke of burning cities. The enemy fleet was even more imposing up close. 17 ships, each one a kilometer-long blade of dark, metal, and predatory grace. They moved in perfect synchronization around the planet, their energy weapons firing in methodical pulses that turned population centers into patches of radioactive glass. Passive sensors only, Chen ordered quietly. I want to know everything about those ships before they know we exist. At the sensor station, Dr. Elena Vasquez worked with equipment that had been designed to analyze mineral compositions, but was now serving as military reconnaissance gear. Getting some interesting readings, Captain. Their hulls are composed of an alloy I've never seen before, incredibly dense but with unusual electromagnetic properties. Shields? That's the weird part. I'm not detecting any defensive energy. Fields. It's like they're not expecting resistance. Communications Officer Jake Morrison looked up from his station. Captain, I'm picking up transmissions between the enemy ships. It's not any language in our database, but the pattern. He paused, running the data through the ship's linguistics program. It's repetitive, methodical, like status reports. Or work orders, suggested Navigation Officer Lisa Park from her position at the helm. Chief Engineer Marcus Webb's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. Captain, final systems check complete. The mining laser is ready, but remember, 3 shots maximum before system failure becomes catastrophic. The modified seismic charges are loaded into the forward launch tubes, but they're armed and unstable. And the engines are pushed to 130% of rated capacity. Define catastrophic, Chen asked, though she suspected she didn't want to know. Best case scenario, we lose main power and drift helplessly through space. Worst case scenario, we become a very brief but spectacular supernova. Understood. All hands, prepare for approach. The Defiance swept around Kepler 442b's magnetic south pole, using the planet's own electromagnetic field to mask their approach. The colony's communication satellites, still broadcasting desperate distress signals, provided additional cover as the small human ship crept closer to the enemy fleet. Distance to nearest enemy vessel? Chen asked. 3,000 kilometers and closing, Park reported. Still no sign they've detected us. On the main display, the enemy ships continued their systematic destruction. Chen watched as one of their energy weapons carved a perfectly straight line across what had been a major city, leaving nothing but glowing slag in its wake. 12 million people? Families, children, entire communities reduced to industrial waste. 2,500 kilometers. Park announced. "Captain," Dr. Vasquez said suddenly, "I'm detecting something unusual. The enemy ships are emitting a low-frequency pulse. It's not random. There's a pattern to it. Communication? More like coordination, as if they're all synchronized to a central signal." Chen's mind raced. A central coordination signal meant a command structure, and command structures meant vulnerabilities. "Can you identify the source?" "Working on it." "There." A new contact appeared on the tactical display, highlighted in red. The largest ship, at the center of their formation. It's broadcasting the coordination pulse to all the others. "Command ship," Chen breathed. "Jake, any change in their transmissions?" Morrison shook his head. "Still following the same pattern. Status reports every 30 seconds, acknowledgements, routine confirmations. It's like they're following a checklist." "Which means," Chen said slowly, "if we disrupt their routine badly enough, they might not know how to adapt." 2,000 kilometers, Park announced. "Captain, we're at maximum effective range for the mining laser." Chen took a deep breath. Everything they'd worked for, everything they'd modified and jury-rigged and pushed beyond safe limits came down to the next few minutes. One ship. 37 crew members. Mining equipment turned into weapons of war, against 17 ships that had methodically destroyed 7 worlds. "All right, people. Here's how this is going to work. We're going to hit them fast, hit them hard, and hit them in a way they've never experienced before. Our goal isn't to destroy them. We can't. Our goal is to disrupt their operation long enough for the real cavalry to arrive." She turned to Morrison. "Jake, record everything. Whatever happens next, the galaxy needs to know." "Recording, Captain." "Park, plot an attack vector on the command ship. Maximum burn, straight at them. No evasive maneuvers. We want to get as close as possible before they realize we're a threat," Vector plotted. "Ready to execute. Webb, prepare the mining laser. Full power, sustained beam. I know it's not designed for combat, but today it doesn't have a choice." "Laser charged and ready, Captain. Focusing array is stable, but remember, 3 shots maximum before catastrophic failure. I remember." Chen's hands hovered over the controls. In her mind, she could see the faces of 12 million people she'd never met, living their lives in the cities below, unaware that their fate was about to be decided by a mining ship with delusions of military grandeur. "Dr. Vasquez, how many people are down there right now?" "Based on the colony's last census report, approximately 11.7 million. The evacuation shuttles have managed to get maybe 300,000 off-planet. 11.7 million lives. More people than had lived on Earth for most of human history, all depending on what happened in the next few minutes." "Execute attack run," Chen ordered. The Defiance leapt forward like a sprinter from the starting blocks, her engines pushed far beyond safe operating parameters. The enemy ships grew rapidly on the main display, their alien geometries becoming more detailed and more intimidating with each passing second. 1,500 kilometers. Still no reaction from the enemy fleet. 1,000 kilometers. "Wait. Captain, I'm reading energy spikes from the nearest ships. I think they've detected us." 500 kilometers. "Captain, the enemy vessels are beginning to turn toward us." Chen's finger hovered over the firing. "Control. 300 kilometers. Webb, status on the mining laser?" "Charged and ready, Captain. Focusing array is stable. Just remember, this thing was designed to cut through rock, not 200 kilometers. The command ship filled the viewport now, a massive blade of alien metal bristling with weapons that could sterilize planets. For a moment, Chen felt the weight of impossible odds, the certainty of failure, the knowledge that they were about to die in the darkness between stars. Then she thought about 12 million people, and her finger found the firing control. Fire. Dabo. Mining laser erupted from the Defiance with a violence that had never been intended by its designers. Without safety protocols to limit its power, without focusing constraints to ensure precise cutting, it became a spear of pure energy that crossed the distance to the command ship in less than a second. The beam struck the alien vessel's hull with the force of a small star. Metal vaporized. Structural supports failed. Entire sections of the ship simply ceased to exist. replaced by expanding clouds of superheated plasma. But the command ship was massive, and the laser was just a mining tool. The beam carved a deep gouge along the vessel's flank, but failed to penetrate to any critical systems. Minimal damage to target, Dr. Vasquez reported. But Captain, look at the other ships. On the tactical display, the enemy fleet was confused. The perfectly synchronized formation had broken as ships began turning in different directions, their coordination signal disrupted by the damage to their command vessel. Several ships had stopped firing entirely while others continued their systematic bombardment of the planet below. "It's working," Morrison breathed. "They don't know how to respond to an attack." "Don't celebrate yet," Chen warned. "We've got their attention now. Park, evasive maneuvers. Webb, prepare second shot." The Defiance twisted away from the command ship as alien weapons began tracking toward them. Energy beams that could melt continents passed through the space where they'd been moments before. "Captain, the focusing array is showing stress fractures," Webb reported. "I don't think it can handle another full-power shot." "It doesn't have a choice." "Fire." The second beam lanced out, striking the command ship's forward section. This time, the damage was more severe. An entire weapon cluster vanished in a ball of fire, and the ship's coordination pulse became erratic. The enemy fleet's confusion deepened. Some ships moved to defend their command vessel, while others continued their bombardment of the planet. The perfect industrial precision was breaking down into chaos, but now the aliens were adapting. Energy beams converged on the Defiance from multiple directions, forcing Park into increasingly desperate evasive maneuvers. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Webb shouted over the intercom. "We've lost environmental control in sections 4 through 7. "Can we make one more shot?" Chen demanded. "The focusing array is failing, Captain. If we fire again, catastrophic failure, I know. Do it anyway." The third shot was different. Instead of a precise beam, the failing laser produced a chaotic burst of energy that spread like a shotgun blast across the command ship's hull. The damage was scattered but extensive, and something critical must have been hit, because the coordination pulse stopped entirely. The enemy fleet fell into complete disarray. Without their central command, the ships began moving in random patterns, some firing at the planet, others at each other in their confusion. The systematic extermination process ground to a halt, but the Defiance was dying. The mining laser had finally succumbed to catastrophic failure, taking most of the ship's power grid with it. Emergency lighting flickered as life support systems struggled to maintain atmosphere in the remaining habitable sections. "Captain," Morrison called out, "I'm reading massive hyperspace signatures, multiple contacts jumping in system." The Galactic Council's emergency fleet materialized around Kepler 442b in a display of coordinated military might that made the enemy vessels look suddenly small and vulnerable. 17 ships became insignificant when faced with the combined firepower of 3 battle fleets. The alien vessels, still confused and uncoordinated from the disruption of their command structure, found themselves surrounded and outgunned. The systematic exterminators who had destroyed 7 worlds with methodical precision were no match for professional military forces when they couldn't coordinate their response. The battle, such as it was, lasted less than 10 minutes. Faced with overwhelming opposition and unable to execute their standard procedures, the surviving alien ships retreated into hyperspace, leaving behind their damaged command vessel and the saved colony below. Admiral Kethvar's voice crackled over the communications array. "Captain Chen, this is Admiral Kethvar. What is your status?" Chen looked around the bridge of the Defiance. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. The air recycling system was making unhealthy grinding noises. Half her crew was dealing with hull breaches and system failures. Her ship was barely holding together, but through the viewport, she could see Kepler 442b. Still there, still turning, still home to 11.7 million people who would wake up tomorrow morning. "Admiral," she said, "mission accomplished." As the Council fleet moved to secure the system and begin rescue operations, Chen allowed herself a moment to consider what had just happened. The wrong species had been called for help. A mining ship had engaged in combat with vessels that could sterilize planets. 37 explorers had faced down an enemy that had destroyed 7 worlds, and somehow, impossibly, it had worked. Not because humans were better warriors than the rest of the galaxy. They weren't. Not because their technology was superior. It wasn't. But because when faced with an impossible situation, humans did what they always did. They improvised. They adapted. They took mining equipment and turned it into weapons. They took a routine industrial process and threw chaos into its gears. They looked at the impossible and decided it was just another engineering problem. The universe was learning something new about Deathworlders, and it was just the beginning. Chapter 4: The Right Answer. 3 weeks after the Battle of Kepler 442b, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the most unusual briefing room she'd ever seen. The circular chamber aboard the Galactic Council flagship Harmony's Edge was designed to accommodate dozens of different species, with gravity fields that could be adjusted for each delegation, and atmospheric controls that could maintain 17 different breathing environments simultaneously. Chen, representing humanity, stood at a podium that felt absurdly formal after 3 weeks of emergency repairs and temporary life support systems. Around her, the greatest military minds in the galaxy had gathered to understand what had happened at Kepler 442b, and more importantly, to figure out how to prevent it from happening again. Admiral Kethvar's 6 eyes studied the tactical display that showed the battle from every angle, recorded by the Defiance's sensors and transmitted to the Council fleet. The recording had been analyzed, dissected, and studied by every military academy in the galaxy. What they'd found had surprised everyone. "Captain Chen," Kethvar began, his translator converting his clicking mandibles into standard Galactic, "your report states that you engaged 17 enemy vessels with a single ship armed with mining equipment." "That's correct, Admiral. And your tactical objective was not to destroy the enemy fleet, but to disrupt their operational procedures." "Yes, sir. We determined that the hostiles were following an industrial process rather than military tactics. Disrupting their coordination would force them to adapt, which their systematic approach wasn't designed to handle." Defense Coordinator Thexbor's reptilian features remained skeptical. "Captain, with respect, this analysis conflicts with every principle of military engagement. The enemy had overwhelming superiority in numbers, firepower, and defensive capabilities. Standard doctrine would have been to withdraw and await reinforcements." Chen nodded. "Standard doctrine assumes that your enemy is also following military principles. These hostiles weren't soldiers, they were workers following a routine. They expected no resistance because they'd never encountered any." "But how did you know this would work?" asked General Vexcol, whose crystalline form flickered with curiosity. "The risk was enormous. If you had been wrong, 12 million people would have died anyway," Chen replied simply. "We had to try something." Dr. Rintal, the Council's chief military strategist, gestured to the tactical display. "Captain, I've reviewed your ship's modifications extensively. The power levels you achieved with your mining laser were theoretically impossible. Your seismic charges were modified, beyond all safety parameters. Your engines were operating at efficiency ratings that should have resulted in catastrophic failure." "They nearly did," Chen admitted. "We pushed everything past its breaking point. But that's what humans do when we're out of options." A murmur of recognition rippled through the assembled military officers. They'd all read the files on humanity's Deathworld origins, but seeing the practical application had been educational. "Captain," Admiral Kethvar continued, "since the Battle of Kepler 442b, we have encountered the hostile species, who call themselves the Harvesters, on 12 more occasions. In every case, Galactic Council forces have successfully repelled their attacks using tactics derived from your engagement." Chen felt a surge of satisfaction. "The disruption strategy works?" "More than works," General Vexcol replied. "The Harvesters appear to be a species that has achieved technological superiority through absolute systematic efficiency. They excel at predetermined processes but cannot adapt when those processes are disrupted. Once we learned to introduce chaos into their operations, their technological advantages became irrelevant. What we discovered, Dr. Rintal added, is that the harvesters have been using the same extermination protocol for centuries. 7 worlds fell because no one had ever attacked them during their process. They literally didn't have contingency plans for resistance. Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Captain Chen, this brings us to the primary purpose of today's briefing. The Galactic Council has been reconsidering humanity's application for membership. Chen's eyebrows rose. Reconsidering? The original assessment classified humans as too dangerous and unpredictable for membership in the Galactic Council, Thexbor explained. Your species' tendency to take extreme risks, to modify equipment beyond safe parameters, to attempt impossible solutions to routine problems. These were seen as destabilizing factors, Kethvar continued. However, recent events have provided new perspective on these characteristics. The tactical display shifted to show a star map of the galaxy, with human space marked as a small bubble on the edge of Council territory. Red markers indicated the locations where harvester attacks had been repelled using human-inspired tactics. What the Council failed to understand, General Vexcole said, is that chaos and unpredictability are not always weaknesses. Sometimes they are exactly what the situation requires. Dr. Rintal gestured to another section of the display. Our military analysts have spent the past 3 weeks studying human tactical philosophy. What we've found is fascinating. Most species develop military doctrine based on maximizing efficiency and minimizing risk. Humans appear to develop tactics based on maximizing adaptability and accepting necessary risk. We call it controlled chaos, Chen said. The idea that if you can't predict the situation, you prepare to handle anything. Exactly, Admiral Kethvar nodded. And against an enemy like the Harvesters, whose entire strategy is based on predictable, systematic operations, controlled chaos is the perfect counter. The briefing room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Chen spoke. Admiral, are you saying that humanity is being accepted into the Galactic Council? More than that, Captain. The Council is formally requesting that humanity establish a joint military training program. We want to learn your tactical philosophy. We want to understand how to introduce productive chaos into military operations. We want to learn how to solve impossible problems by treating them as engineering challenges. Chen felt a mix of pride and apprehension. Admiral, I should point out that human tactics work because humans are, well, human. We evolved on a death world where everything was trying to kill us. We learned to be adaptable because the alternative was extinction. I'm not sure other species can be taught to think like humans. Perhaps not, Thexbor admitted. But they can be taught to work with humans. Mixed crews, joint operations, collaborative problem-solving. The galaxy faces threats that require new approaches. And, General Vexcole added, there's another factor. Since word of the Battle of Kepler 442b spread, we've been contacted by 17 other species that have been denied Council membership for similar reasons. Species classified as too aggressive, too unpredictable, too willing to take risks. The star map shifted again, showing new regions of space highlighted in blue. The Korthax Confederacy, Dr. Rintal explained, who were rejected because they settle planets that other species consider uninhabitable. The Veltar Commonwealth, whose military tactics were deemed too chaotic for integration with Council forces. The Zephyrian Republic, who modify their technology so extensively that our engineers can't understand it. Species like humans, Chen realized. Exactly like humans, Admiral Kethvar confirmed. What we're proposing is not just human membership in the Galactic Council, but the formation of a new division within Council military forces. A rapid response unit composed of species that specialize in unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Chen stared at the star map, watching as more regions lit up in blue. An entire section of the galaxy filled with species that thought like humans. Adaptable, unpredictable, willing to jury-rig solutions and push technology beyond safe limits. What would you call this division? She asked. Admiral Kethvar's translator picked up something that might have been amusement in his clicking response. The Emergency Response Corps, though our military analysts have suggested an unofficial designation, the Chaos Division. Captain, Thexbor added, the Council would like to offer you the position of Chief Tactical Advisor for the new division. Your job would be to help us understand how to weaponize impossibility. Chen thought about the past 3 weeks. The desperate modifications to the Defiance. The terrifying moments when jury-rigged systems held together through determination and luck. The impossible satisfaction of watching 12 million lives continue because 37 humans had refused to accept that the situation was hopeless. Admiral, I accept the position on one condition. Specify. The first rule of the Chaos Division is that there are no impossible problems, only problems that require creative solutions. Admiral Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what the translator rendered as laughter. Captain Chen, I believe you're going to fit in perfectly. As the briefing concluded and the assembled officers began filing out, Chen remained at the podium, staring at the star map. The small bubble of human space was about to expand dramatically, not through conquest or colonization, but through something far more powerful. The recognition that sometimes being wrong was exactly right. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you gave impossible problems to species that specialized in solving them. 6 months later, when the Harvester home fleet, all 300 ships, arrived at the Galactic Council's core worlds expecting to find the same systematic resistance they'd encountered for centuries, they instead faced the first joint operation of the Chaos Division. 47 ships from 18 different species, using tactics that no military academy had ever taught, employing weapons that had been modified beyond all recognition, commanded by officers who treated impossible odds as routine engineering problems. The battle lasted 3 hours and 17 minutes. The Harvesters, faced with an enemy that refused to follow any predictable pattern, found their systematic superiority useless against opponents who changed tactics faster than they could adapt. The war ended not with the systematic extermination that the Harvesters had perfected, but with their complete surrender to forces they couldn't understand or counter. Later military historians would call it the definitive proof that chaos, properly applied, could overcome any system. The humans just called it Tuesday. Epilogue. The right species 1 year after the formation of the Chaos Division, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the new joint headquarters, watching as ships from dozens of species conducted training exercises that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. A Korthax heavy cruiser was attempting to dock with a Veltar science vessel while both ships were under acceleration, a maneuver that violated every safety protocol in the Galactic Council manual, but which the Chaos Division had found necessary for rapid emergency response. Nearby, a human exploration ship was working with a Zephyrian destroyer to test a new tactic they called creative interpretation of physics, using modified mining equipment to create temporary hyperspace anomalies that could disrupt enemy formations. Impressive, isn't it? Admiral Kethvar said, joining Chen at the viewport. His translator had been modified with human colloquialisms, giving his speech patterns a casual tone that would have horrified the Council's diplomatic corps. Terrifying is more like it, Chen replied, watching as the Korthax cruiser completed its docking maneuver with what appeared to be centimeters to spare. 6 months ago, none of these species would work together. Now they're creating new ways to break the laws of physics. The Harvesters weren't the only threat the galaxy faced, Kethvar observed. They were just the most obvious. There are other systematic enemies out there, species that rely on predictable responses, on conventional thinking, on the assumption that everyone will follow the rules. Chen nodded. Intelligence reports had been coming in for months about new threats at the galaxy's edge. The Geometric Collective, whose warfare was based on mathematical precision. The Hierarchical Empire, whose rigid command structure couldn't adapt to unconventional tactics. The Pattern Weavers, whose entire civilization was built on absolute order. All of them would have been unstoppable against conventional Galactic Council forces. None of them would know what to do when faced with opponents who treated impossibility as a starting point rather than an end point. Captain, Kethvar continued, I wanted to inform you that the Council has approved your recommendation for the next expansion of the Chaos Division. Chen turned from the viewport. Which recommendation? The one requesting authorization to recruit from pre-spaceflight civilizations. Species that haven't yet learned that certain things are impossible. A smile crossed Chen's face. You mean species that are still young enough to be stupid? I believe the official term is unencumbered by conventional limitations. Kethvar replied, his mandibles clicking in amusement. Though your phrasing is more accurate. Through the viewport, Chen watched as a team of human engineers worked with their Zephyrian counterparts to install what appeared to be a mining laser on a diplomatic courier ship. The modification violated approximately 73 safety regulations and would probably void the ship's warranty, but it would also give the courier the ability to cut through asteroid fields in case of emergency. It was exactly the kind of insane, practical, impossible solution that the Chaos Division had become famous for. Admiral, Chen said, do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd waited for proper military reinforcement instead of calling us? Kethvar was quiet for a long moment. 12 million people would have died, he said finally. 7 more worlds would have fallen before we understood the nature of the threat. The harvesters would have continued their systematic expansion until they encountered something capable of stopping them. And if they hadn't, then the galaxy would have learned that sometimes efficiency and order are not enough, that sometimes the systematic approach is the wrong approach, that sometimes you need someone who doesn't know that what they're attempting is impossible. Chen thought about the crew of the Defiance, now scattered across the Chaos Division as training instructors and tactical advisors. Webb was teaching Korthax engineers how to modify equipment beyond safe parameters. Dr. Vasquez was working with Veltar scientists to develop new applications for mining technology. Morrison was heading up a communications unit that specialized in coordinating impossible maneuvers between incompatible species. All of them were doing jobs they'd never trained for, solving problems that didn't exist in any manual, proving every day that the right answer wasn't always the obvious answer. Admiral, Chen said, I have a confession to make. Oh? When you first called us, when you explained the situation at Kepler 442b, I knew it was hopeless. 1 ship against 17. Mining equipment against planet killers. 37 crew members against an enemy that had destroyed 7 worlds. But you responded anyway. Because 12 million people needed help. And we were the only ones available. It wasn't heroism or tactical brilliance or any kind of grand strategy. It was just what humans do when someone needs help and there's no one else to do it. Kethvar's 6 eyes studied Chen's face. Captain, do you know what the most important entry in Humanity's Council membership file says? What's that? Species demonstrates consistent tendency to attempt rescue operations regardless of probability of success. The Council psychologists originally classified this as a dangerous mental disorder. Chen laughed. And now? Now we call it the most valuable military asset in the galaxy. As they watched, another impossible maneuver began outside the viewport. A Zephyrian ship was attempting to transfer crew to a human vessel, while both ships were jumping through hyperspace, something that every physics textbook said couldn't be done. The maneuver succeeded perfectly. Captain, Admiral Kethvar said, I have one more piece of news. The Council has received a distress signal from the Andromeda Galaxy, an automated probe sent by a civilization that describes itself as facing systematic extermination by unknowable forces. Chen felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the same feeling she'd experienced when the emergency beacon from Kepler 442b had first reached the Defiance. How far away? 2.5 million light-years. At maximum hyperspace velocity, it would take our fastest ships approximately 6 months to reach them. And how long do they have? The probe was transmitted 3 months ago. If the pattern holds, they have maybe 3 more months before complete extermination. Chen stared out at the training exercises, at the impossible maneuvers and jury-rigged solutions and species working together in ways that defied every conventional expectation. Admiral, she said, I think it's time for the Chaos Division's first extra-galactic deployment. Captain, The logistics alone are staggering. The distance, the resources required, the unknown dangers. I know, Chen replied. It's impossible, Admiral. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in understanding. I'll prepare the mission briefing. As the two officers headed back to the command center to begin planning humanity's most ambitious rescue operation, neither of them noticed the small notation that appeared on the tactical display behind them. Incoming transmission from Andromeda Galaxy probe. Updated message. Situation critical. Systematic extermination proceeding ahead of schedule. Any assistance welcome. P.S. We heard about the humans. The wrong species had been asked for help once again, and once again, they were exactly the right answer. The universe was learning that sometimes impossible was just another word for Tuesday, and the humans were just getting started. The end.